By now, you guys are probably used to hearing and seeing a bunch of stuff from KBears here on the channel, right? I've reviewed a bunch of stuff from them. And today, we're taking a look at a new one. This is their new entry-level IEM, the smaller, younger brother of the KS2 that we reviewed last year. This is the KS1. And I mean, -1 points for creativity to the naming department, but at least they're doing a better job already than Sony has ever done. Anyways, we are going to go through the same structure of price, power, build, and sound quality, just as every other IEM and headphone review. But if you instantly equated the KS1 as being a cheaper and lesser version of the KS2, you're basically right. But let's just get on with it. In terms of price, the KS1 costs 99 bucks. No, I'm just kidding. It costs $19.99. So basically $20, which makes it 20% cheaper than the 25 bucks of the KS2. So even more, like digging themselves even deeper into this budget category. In terms of power, these things are just like every other budget option out there, basically. Extremely easy to drive, to the point where if you can't really drive them for some reason, check your pulse. Now, even less of a surprise is the build, because when you look at the KS1, it's basically a KS2 with a different paint job. And being quite honest, I really like this white paint job on the KS1. I don't know exactly why it doesn't look any more premium than anything else, but it also gives a sort of a ceramic sort of vibe, and I don't know, I really like it. Anyways, this is basically the KS2. Same shape, same overall size. It's really comfortable because it's super light. The paint job is different and the nozzle is slightly different, but these are basically the same IEMs. Oh, aside from the nozzle, there's actually the cable, which is also different, and in this case, worse than the KS2. And the cable alone could probably account for the $5 difference in the price. And this thing uses a double magnet 10mm dynamic driver, which in terms of sound makes it, think KS2 again. It's super heavy on the bass, but in this case, to maybe differentiate itself, this is a lot more present, has a lot more brightness in the treble, which makes the KS1 much more V-shaped in comparison. It is much more aggressive in that sense, but it still lacks in definition and detail. The overall sound profile and sound signature does feel a little bit grainy, and I don't mean in terms of having a sort of character to it. It just lacks focus. It's not as well presented. And just like with the KS2, this is still not an IEM that I would say is nice for vocals because of a dip in the mid-range. This will definitely perform much better in situations where vocals are not the thing that you're looking for, like EDM or stuff like that. Now, that overly aggressive treble isn't necessarily aggressive to the point of being in your face too much, so it's not fatiguing all the time. But if you are a person who's a little more sensitive to the treble regions, this can get in your face and on your nerves much quicker than the KS2 would ever do. And the overall sound signature does lean towards warmth, but it's not a warm pair of IEMs, and it's not exactly balanced. In terms of soundstage, it is somewhat closed, but not exactly pinpoint in the middle of your forehead, which is nice. And the imaging and instrumental separation isn't necessarily on top of the game. It's a little bit jumbled up most of the time, but I would also say it's kind of fair, almost, for the price range. I wouldn't expect something that much better than this. I did expect it, however, to be a little bit better because of the KS2, which wasn't necessarily a champion in any of these categories either way. So as a whole, saying that the KS1 is a decent $20 pair of IEMs for bass heads isn't wrong, but I would say that KBears does need to step up the game a little bit. For one, pushing more treble through these things doesn't make it special. It just makes it, different for the sake of being different, and that's a problem. Because at $5 more than this, the $25 KS2, which is an overall better IEM, is already getting to a point that's kind of hard to recommend simply because of how many other options are out there with better construction that sound just as good or maybe even better in terms of sound signature that you were looking for and better overall packages. Again, around the same price range, which if it is a problem for the KS2, it's definitely a problem for the KS1. And secondly, I have had a couple of people point out to me recently that the KS1, and by consequence the KS2 as well, but that the KS1 seems to be a copy of the KZ EDX, but with less detail, less aggressive highs, and much more low end, at least in terms of amount, not necessarily quality. It's also basically identical in terms of construction, even the color options, so they're kind of like a copy of each other. And I mean, I know there's that saying that great artists steal and all that, but the EDX costs less than half of what KBears is asking for the KS1. And that's a problem. Now, I haven't personally heard the EDX, so I can't really compare them, and I don't think it would be fair for me to consider in this review other people's opinions of how they stack up in terms of sound. But they do seem to be awfully similar, which is at least a little bit suspicious. And if you account the kind of big difference in price, I mean, when you get down to brass tacks, if you really enjoy bass-heavy IEMs and you like a little bit of more sparkle, a little bit more forwardness and brightness in the treble regions, the KS1 isn't necessarily going to do a bad job at it. That's not what I'm saying. And it's not like you're paying mountains of cash for it, but it also seems like there are plenty, or at least many other more inexpensive options out there for the same job, you know? So yeah, this kind of is just a KS2 but cheaper, sort of. And that's about it. Thanks a lot for watching. Check out these other videos that might be of interest to you as well. This is Gus, and I'll catch you guys later.